Great. I just, there's a few things that, just housekeeping rules. You guys will have some questions. You guys can drop it in the chat box. I'd be happy to answer those questions at the end. I won't be looking at the chat box as I go along because I just can't, do two things at the same time. But I will be talking to you guys about emotional resilience. For those of you guys who don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Saleh Afridi. I'm a clinical psychologist and the managing director of the Lighthouse Arabia, which is a mental health and wellness center. It's one of the largest centers in the region that serves mental health needs for people across the age range, from really young children all the way to the elderly and everyone in between. We also have things like mental health first aid. We do psychology, psychiatry, speech and language, occupational, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that we feel very, very passionate about is being able to provide community support that is quality, high-level support to the community free of charge. And we do that through our therapeutic spaces, which we refer to as support groups. But all of our support groups are led by clinical or licensed clinicians. And so we take a lot of pride in being able to provide that kind of support to the community. And we have about 23 support groups running right now. So that's just a little bit about us. If you guys want to find out more information, you can on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok. We are on all of those things. So let's talk a little bit about emotional resilience during these uncertain times that we live in. And it just feels like it's one unprecedented event after the another. And so we just really are feeling like we can't catch our breath before we actually have to contend with some other crises that might be happening either locally, globally, but we're all impacted. And that's one thing that has happened during COVID is that, the usage of online and social media really, really accelerated and, exponentially increased. And so what we are witnessing from around the world is really sort of getting inside of us, inside our minds, inside our psyches. So I just want to break down what is the overwhelm that we are experiencing, because sometimes we're like, well, what's the big deal? Like, why am I feeling like this? And then what you need to do, especially when things feel a little bit wobbly. And right now, I would say things feel a little bit wobbly. When things are happening in other parts of the world doesn't mean that they're not impacting us. And so right now, I think a lot of people are feeling a bit overwhelmed. And so what do you need to do when you start to feel like, oh my God, everything is just too much? So let's talk a little bit about, why we are all feeling overwhelmed. You guys might be familiar with the Maslow hierarchy of needs. The Maslow hierarchy of needs basically breaks up in what are our motivating needs. Not to say that if my physiological needs are met, then, I can move up. It doesn't work in a linear way. It works in that I could be a very self-actualized person, good self-esteem, have love and belonging, but immediately when my lower level needs are compromised, I will drop to that place and live from that place of, just wanting my basic human needs sort of met. Now, one thing to know about human beings, which makes us a little bit different from other mammals, is first of all, all mammals have a fight or flight detector in their brain. The fact that we survived on the planet for as long as we did is because we had this wiring that could look for threat in the environment. If a bush is moving, I immediately jump back and say, okay, there's going to be some danger there. But then I see that it was just a little kitten and then I relax, right? And so that's basically what makes me very similar to a horse or to a deer or to any other mammal. But what human beings are different in is that, yes, we have the fight or flight system like the horse or the deer, but we actually can activate that fight or flight with just our thoughts alone. So I can be sitting in the safety of my office on a beach in the Maldives and think about something that is dangerous, or think about something that makes me nervous, or think about something that makes me scared. Maybe it's a project that I have to do, or maybe it's a boss that I have to contend with, or something that's really bothering me in another part of the world. And my fight or flight system can kick on. So the same threat reaction can be triggered, and that's the definition of anxiety. Other animals do not have anxiety, they have fear. And once that threat is gone, so imagine that a deer sees a lion and it takes off, and once it's safe, it actually will shut the system down and it goes back to grazing as if nothing happened. If we got chased by a lion and we got to safety, we would be calling our mother, posting about it, calling our father, calling our friend, writing about it, reading about it, like all of that. We would still continue with that fight or flight system. So that's something that you guys need to know, is that we have the power with our thoughts alone to trigger our very basic human needs being compromised. And right now, it does feel like that. What we see in the news, just COVID and what happened, and words like vaccine and isolation and this type of language can actually be very, very triggering for us, even now, because it's not like, okay, well, we don't have to wear masks outside in the UAE, so all of a sudden we feel like COVID is over. Any minute we hear that Singapore has this many cases and this many people, and that, like, it can still make us feel like, oh my God, is something bad going to happen to us again? And we've really dealt with a lot. We've dealt with a lot of losses in the last 2 years. Regular routines that we had, being able to see each other's faces in person, hug each other, our rituals of graduations and weddings and funerals. When someone dies or when someone gives birth, we can't just show up at their house. We have to think, do they have COVID? Do I have COVID? Is she vaccinated? Am I vaccinated? Being able to travel whenever we want, in the pace, however we want, boundaries between home and work. I don't know where you guys are watching me from, but like, I'm probably sitting in somebody's bedroom on a screen, or I might be sitting in an office, or, everything feels like I lost a lot. I lost a lot last year. And that's not to say that, oh, there's my family that I haven't seen, or maybe I've seen them, but I just wasn't able to be with them in the same way because I was struggling with my own stuff, or my own hopes and dreams that I had for 2020 and 2021 and 2022. Like, it really feels like we're compromising a lot. And then obviously the grief that we hold, which is the collective grief of what we see about climate change and what we see about world events and the, wars and conflicts and all of these things that we see, it impacts us. And that's a lot for us to hold. And so I just want you to know that what we went through and what we continue to go through is not a small thing. It is a big thing. And these small, and even if it was all small things, many small things become very big things. If I ask you to hold a bottle of water like this, just hold a glass, just hold it out in front of you like this. You'll hold it. It's a light bottle, right? It's not heavy. But if I tell you to hold it for 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, all of a sudden your arm will get tired, even from a very light bottle that you might be holding. So small things, when we hold on to them and we don't let them go, or we don't process them, or we don't talk about them, or we don't share them with our community in holding our collective grief, then they become very heavy for us. Okay. And so I just want you to hold that in mind and have mercy and kindness and gentleness towards yourself. So what are some things you need to do when you are feeling a little bit wobbly? And I want you to think about any life event, not just global life events that we're contending with, but like maybe there was a death in the family. Maybe there was a divorce. Maybe there was a birth. Maybe there was a marriage. Right? Like any of these events where your life feels like it's in an adjustment period, you want to do the things that I am telling you. So life actually had always been uncertain. We thought it was certain, but we don't know what tomorrow holds. We can have all sorts of plans, but all those plans can go out the window. So What do you do when life starts to feel a little bit wobbly? I'm going to change the title of this talk to call it that. What to do in wobbly times? The first thing you want to do is you want to take care of your physical body. I know we talk about mental health and we talk about physical health and we talk about dental health, but these things are all one thing, guys. There is no mental health without physical health. And I want you to know about the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a nerve. It's the second largest nerve that goes from the base of your brain and it goes to all the different parts of your body. It literally is the essence of the mind and body connection. Okay, so this vagus nerve, think about it as a 10-lane highway. Now it goes up. No, it goes up and sends signals. So when my heart rate is moving and my breath is shallow, my brain is getting a signal, something's not right. Something's not right. And that is decoding it. And I'm looking in my environment with this kind of fight or flight. But when my mind sees something that is dangerous, it also sends a signal to the body. And the body starts to have a panic and it starts to get weird feelings in my stomach and. So this vagus nerve connects your brain to your body, your heart, your kidneys, your gut, your liver. These things are all connected to the brain. Okay, so if my liver is tired, my brain will be tired. When my kidneys are not hydrated, my brain will not be hydrated. Like this is kind of how it works. But this 10-lane highway is actually 8 lanes going up and 2 lanes going down. So what does that mean? That means if my body is in a good state, my mind for sure will follow. So when the world doesn't make any sense, and when you really feel overwhelmed, and when you really feel like things are too hectic, focus on the body. The number one thing you need to be concerned about is your sleep. And I'm really sorry to say, but in this part of the world, people just don't take sleep very seriously. Anything less than 7 to 8 hours is considered sleep deprivation. One thing I want you to remember about sleep, it is not rest. Your conscious mind is at rest, but every single part of your body is now saying, all right, guys, we got to go heal the tissue. We've got to do insulin regulation. We've got to do thermoregulation. We've got to process all the things in our dreams. Like every other part of your body will kick on when you go to sleep. Your growth hormone, your detoxing, your glymphatic system, which washes out the brain and prevents things like dementia. All of that is happening in your sleep. It cannot happen in your waking life. That's why you will never have an Olympic athlete or someone who's, a surgeon or that really doesn't take sleep very seriously, because we just know what happens when you sleep. Your body recovers. That's the first thing I'm going to say is you've got to get your sleep in order. What are the 2 biggest things that are going against that? Number 1 is caffeine. Caffeine has a really long half-life and a very, very long quarter life. What does that mean? Right around now, people start to feel, oh, I just need a shot of espresso. So they take a double shot of espresso right around 12 o'clock to get rid of that circadian rhythm dip that you might be going through. That double shot of espresso in 6 hours, there's still a single shot worth of caffeine in your system. At around 11 o'clock, it's still a quarter of that caffeine still in your system. And I see up and down Jumeirah Road, all these coffee shops, and I pray to God that they are drinking decaffeinated coffee, because you are not going to get that deep sleep. So all of these diseases that we are coming up with in our body, the inflammation that is in our body, in our mind and in our body, as a result of us not getting sufficient sleep and for the body to do what it's supposed to do. The second thing that is getting in the way of you getting good sleep is your blue light. So each phone and each screen has a blue light on it. You can get blue light screen protectors, or you can get something like this, which are the blue light screen glasses, and that's going to help protect you from that blue light. The blue light is the same light that the surgeon has over their head that says, do not release melatonin into this brain, because melatonin is not the sleep hormone. Melatonin is the darkness hormone. As soon as the night happens, melatonin starts to release. But our bodies are so confused because there is no night. There is light all the time. There is light all the time in our faces, right? We are looking at phones all day long and screens all day long. So our body is confused because it's saying, but it's not night yet. Don't release melatonin. And if you look at the two brains down there, this is supposed to be from an fMRI. And the picture is basically that your amygdala, which is your fight or flight, nervous anxiety part of your brain, is 60% more activated when you do not get sufficient quality and quantity of sleep. So this is my lecture on sleep, and I will not say any more about that, but I could literally talk for an hour about sleep. The next thing I'm going to tell you guys is to hydrate. If you Google the symptoms of depression and you Google the symptoms of dehydration, you will see that there is an overlap. Sometimes, especially when the weather gets like this and Ramadan is coming up, like you are going to get dehydrated if you do not pay close attention to your hydration consciously. So just hydrate. 2 liters, make sure you're drinking enough, okay? The next thing I'm going to say is to eat nutritious foods. Now, of course, there will be a day where you eat a burger, and there will be a day like today, I actually had a chocolate bar and I will eat chocolate, and that's going to be okay. But you cannot make a habit of this because your gut is your second brain. 90%, 99.0% of your serotonin, which is your gut which is your happy chemical, which is an antidepressant, guess where it's produced? Not in your brain, it's in your gut. And the gut-brain axis is real. So if you eat junk, get ready to feel like junk. If you're living on Doritos and Diet Coke, you're not going to feel very alive because that's literally the shelf life of like 100 years on those things. So really, guys, you've got to take care of the gut, and especially in times of high stress. Like I said, every now and then it's okay. It's okay to treat yourself and to soothe yourself, and it's fine, but you cannot make a habit of this. Limit your caffeine, your sugar, and your alcohol. That's just something that you should avoid in times of high stress. And also things like meditation and chanting and cold exposure therapy is super good for your vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the opposite of fight or flight. It's the battery pack that juices up our rest and digest system. And that's our nervous system. When we feel relaxed, our vagal tone is good. So what we want to do is we want to juice up our vagus nerve so we can feel more relaxed. And we need to do it all day long, 5 times a day with the turn of the sun, if we can. So meditate, pray. When you pray, don't just go up and down, pray and be with that and sit with that and take some deep breaths at the end of that and say, I am here and I leave my problems here and then I get up. So really make it a spiritual practice. The next thing, now that, okay, by the way, if you guys don't do any of this stuff, you can just stop listening to anything else I have to say, because it doesn't matter what else you do. If you don't do this, you are not going to feel good. You are not going to feel good. I'm a psychologist. I've been doing this for 17 years now. And I'm telling you, when I am not feeling balanced in my body, I am yelling at my kids. I am not a very nice person to be around, kicking the door, the dog, the people, everything in front of me, yelling and shouting. Where did all of my CBT skills go and my DBT and all this knowledge that I have behind me? It went out the window, because when your frontal lobe is turned off, your amygdala isn't in charge. And when your amygdala is in charge, you have no access to your wisdom and your higher levels of thinking. So you need to make sure that that amygdala is deactivated. And this is how you do it. The next few things I'm going to move through a whole lot faster now. And that's where the first thing you want to do is you want to just have, you guys are at the Happiness Research Center. Like, happiness is great, but happiness is incomplete if you don't have space for sadness, right? Happiness is a very, authentic happiness is a very big state of being. It is an open, expansive way of being with life. It is not just smiley faces and being happy and positive all the time. No, that is a narrow definition, and it is inauthentic, because when I'm hurting, I need to be able to name that. that today is a difficult day. Today, I'm not feeling right. So having feelings, all kinds of feelings, is part of happiness. And knowing that, you know what, this also happened to me, and I am grieving, and I am at loss, and I'm grateful, and I'm grateful, and I'm grateful. So having this kind of willingness to accept all the ups and downs that come with life, and not just becoming super focused on remaining happy all the time, because that's not happiness. It literally is called pleasure. And you cannot go from pleasure to pleasure to pleasure. Your life will feel hollow. So if we want to experience great joy, we must be able to be open to great sadness too. Okay. And when things happen, you don't say, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Why did it happen to me? You say, why is this happening for me? What am I supposed to take from this? What am I supposed to learn from this? That's making meaning. You don't come to that place right away. First, you just got to feel the pain. And then eventually you can say, this is happening for me. I'm supposed to evolve from this. This is going to change me for the better. It's going to open me up. Also know things like that you might still be hearing: isolation, although some of these things have gotten lifted recently. Quarantining. I got, one of our colleagues had to quarantine because of his wife, and one of his clients was also, he had sort of exposed him to COVID. And so these kinds of things are still happening, and it makes people feel really stressed out. But I want you to be very conscious about the language you use. The language will determine your frequency and the frequency with which you vibrate and your fight or flight. If I say, I'm going to stay safe, I'm going to stay home, versus I'm going to isolate. Why would I isolate? I don't want to isolate. We are not isolated. Some of you guys are watching me from your homes right now. Like, there is no way for us to isolate. We would be so lucky to isolate at this point, because the world is in our pockets, right? We don't have to use these terms that are really old and dated. So using language which actually resonates and provides a sense of safety is what you want to be thinking about. I'm moving into the future. I'm looking forward to this adventure of all of these new changes that are coming up, rather than, oh my God, new normal, which is like making people freak out. Instead of saying, I have to go attend a lecture by Dr. Saleha, you get to say things like, I get to. Instead of saying, I have to cook for my kids, I get to cook for my kids. Instead of saying, I have to go to work, I say, I get to go to work. You see, one word shifted the whole. Just say it out loud. I get to go to the gym, instead of I have to go to the gym. Having to go do something is actually a victim stance. Someone is making me do it, rather than I get to do this. I'm so blessed I get to go to the gym. Remember when we weren't allowed to do that? Like, I get to go to the beach. I have access to the beach. I have access to the outdoors. Like, these are the ways where you actually build resilience. And they're small drops in a big bucket of resilience, but your language will determine that. And just avoid using the word don't. Instead of saying, I don't want to get sick, say, I want to be healthy. Instead of saying, I don't want to get fat, say, I want to be healthy. I want to choose to eat things that are good for me. I want to move, rather than I don't want to be a couch potato. Like, what do you want? Speak in that. And that actually will make you feel like you're moving towards a life you want, rather than away from a life you don't want, which doesn't feel good. And I know it seems pretty small, but I really just pay attention to this for one day. How many times you complain? How many times you say don't? How many times you say things you don't like, rather than things you actually want? We literally are creating our reality. The next thing is that, a lot of you guys are, hybrid working or hybrid studying or hybrid whatever, and use this as an invitation to spend more time with yourself. You might feel a little bit like, we need social connection. We want to be socially connected. So invest in that. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But this is really about, reframing some of these invitations that you have for being with yourself more, for being quiet and being still and being silent. If you look at all the great men and women from the past, whether it was Prophet Muhammad to Moses, to Mother Teresa, to Bill Gates, think about anybody from the past or the present, and you will know that they all went away where they heard the voice of God, or they connected to their higher power, or they found their inspiration. Everyone went away from people they loved, and they said, I need to be alone for a while, and I need to just be with whatever I have. So don't be so afraid to be alone. And if you are afraid to be alone, then you need to sort out your relationship with yourself. Because if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, you will never feel connected to anyone else. Your connection with other people solely relies on your connection with yourself. And as deeply as I can connect to myself, I will connect to the other person. The next thing is to make a list of all the things you do have control over, because we really can feel so powerless in the face of some of these great big things that are happening in the world. You cannot control what's happening in Ukraine. You cannot control NATO's decision. You cannot control COVID. You cannot control travel bans. There's things you cannot control. There are things you can control. So do whatever it is that you can control. And that usually is the things in my environment, my body, the people that I love. Who am I kind to? Who do I give to? Where do I serve? How do I serve? This is what I have control over. And what happens when you do something about it, not just make a list, when you actually do something about it, you actually send a signal to the brain that I am not afraid. Because actions are empowering. Any action, even if it's exercise, it actually makes the body feel like you're in control. I actually had people take control of their lives just through exercising. If I can tell myself every morning I'm going to wake up at 7 and I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk, then I'm not as out of control as I thought I would be. So actions are empowering and they counteract fear. Please do not wait for motivation. Oh, I don't feel motivated to walk, or I don't motivated to drink water. No, you're never going to feel motivated before. You've got to, momentum begets momentum, movement begets movement. So you've got to move a little bit and then energy starts to build. So that's what you have to do, is take the tiny step towards what you want to do. And for me, in times of crisis, I always say, where can I help? How can I help? Me showing up here for you guys, with you guys today, is how can I help? And that's me saying, I'm in control of whatever it is that I can control, and I can control where I serve today. The next thing is just take control of your day. Make sure that you really show up for your day fully. One theory that you guys might be familiar with in your university is the enclothed cognition theory. The enclothed cognition theory talks about, you dressing the part. When they say the clothes make the man/woman, well, that actually is basically true, because research shows that if I dress to show up in my power suit, I'm actually going to negotiate better. I'm going to, have better presentations, better closing arguments. So it's going to be very important for you to actually dress the part in how you show up. I know a lot of people are wearing their pajamas and they throw their abaya over, or their yoga pants, and they have like a dress shirt. It's okay to do it sometimes, but don't make a habit of it, guys, because your brain is sending a signal. Your body is sending a signal to the brain saying, you're still in your pajamas. Shouldn't you be sleeping right now? And you just don't want to deal with that. You want to show up fully to work. So dress up and show up. And even wear shoes if you're at home, because it really makes you feel like you're showing up to something. And have a routine and a rhythm to your day. If you don't know what you're doing tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow evening, then you're probably going to have a lot more anxiety, because the the formula for anxiety is powerlessness plus uncertainty. So take out the uncertainty from your life and you just make some certainty in your life. Okay, so find things that you can have a rhythm to your day. You know, in the Quran and in the Arabic, Arab tradition, it actually says if you want to know about your nature, look at nature. And in nature, there is a time and a place for everything. There is a season and a reason for everything. So that's what you need: a season, a reason, a time, and a place. That's what you need to be incorporating, being one with that kind of nature's lessons, and have a strategy for how you're going to go through your days. If you don't know what that is, look at your schedule. Time management is life management. Life management is time management. And I have 4 children and a business and I get how stressful these times can be, but my life would be so much more out of control if I didn't know what I was going to be doing week by week. So schedule it accordingly. The next thing I would do, and I'm sure you guys are all doing this, but I would tell you not to do this, is to really limit your interaction with social media, panic reading, news, Twitter feeds that are literally firing away like machine guns towards us with the latest movement that any forces is making into that region. Like, you don't need to know to that degree and to that minute detail as to what's happening play by play. We've had wars in the past, and we've had conflict in the past, and we've had trauma in the past, but we didn't know play by play, and we made it through, right? So you can actually give to the people in your life. You can give to the causes that speak to you, but you don't need to know play by play. Turn off the notifications, mute the accounts that are triggering, and take care of yourself, especially when you feel overwhelmed. You do not need to know. And I know there are people that are saying, but there are people dying in the world. Yes, there are people dying in the world. And yes, you should give in whichever way you can. You should give of your prayers. You should give of your money. You should give of your love. You should give of your service, but you do not need to know what's happening play by play. Okay, you do not need to be part of the war zone while you're standing in the grocery store line or when you're at the stoplight. It's too much for your nervous system. And there is such a thing as secondary trauma, where you are not in the traumatic war zone, but you're experiencing the trauma of the war zone. So there is such a thing as PTSD, even if you're sitting in the safety of your home. Sufyan mentioned this, which is about connections and relationships. Strong relationships are the #1 indicator of your happiness. Invest in the people in your life, but also know that toxic relationships, or I don't like to use that word, but negative relationships are far louder than positive ones in your life. Okay, so it's a 1 to 5 kind of ratio here. So if you have negative people in your sphere, limit your interaction. You cannot cut from your family or your friends, but there are times where you can just go and talk about the weather. We don't need to talk about politics, and we don't need to solve the world's problems when we sit together. We're just going to say, hey, what was the movie you watched, and how did you do, and what's the weather, and what are we doing this weekend, and let's talk about the food. So keep it superficial. We don't need to discuss the world's issues, and assert those boundaries around that toxicity, and know that there is an emotional contagion. And negative emotions are far more contagious than positive emotions. So if you are around negativity, it will have a bigger influence than if you are around positivity. So you have to be around 5 positive emotions to counteract the negative emotion. So just be very conscious of that. And also know that you could be the negative person that people are sort of struggling with. So how can you be less negative? Because your energy feeds other people, okay? And then the last couple things I would say, just look around your room. Is your room calm? Is it inspiring? Is it beautiful? Is it cluttered? Does it have flowers or scents? You know, I keep things like I have candles and I have flowers, as you will see in the back, and I have things like perfume and room spray in my just arm's length, because I want to create an environment that soothes me. And I am very sensitive to my environment. So I have teas and water, and, you know, I've created a spa-like space because this is where I have to spend my day. So how can you do that, where each and everything in your life is actually nourishing you and loving you and holding you and soothing you? Because if you think about it, you can be super, super hectic, but then you go to a spa and all of a sudden you're calm and like, oh my God, I feel so relaxed. Why? No one came and said, Dr. Saleha, we would like you to be relaxed now. No one said that, but you immediately relax because everything in your environment says relax. So find ways to make a spa-like space, a safe space that soothes your senses. And then lastly, ask yourself, what is the smallest step I need to take? Guys, we don't need to hold the whole world on our shoulders, and we don't need to think about everything that needs to be thought about every moment of the day. And when you feel like the world's problems are too big and you are too small, just think about the smallest step I need to take right now. What's the smallest step? What do I need to do right now? What am I going to do? I'm going to finish this talk, and then I'm going to have 10 minutes break, and then I'm going to go to my client, and then I'm going to go to a meeting, and then I'm going to go to my other client, and then I'm going to go home to my kids. And that's it. Step by step by step by step, I will make it to the end of my day where I will put my head on the pillow. And this day will have been a good day because I did the best I could, and I gave to the people I could, and I didn't try to solve the world's issues. Okay, so shrink it down into a bite-sized. If I look at Everest, oh my God, it's so big, but each step takes you to the top. So don't try to think of the whole Everest. Just think about the steps in front of you, and you will make it. And in a year from now, 5 years from now, these things might not matter as much. Oh, there's one last thing. Just know that we are practicing realistic optimism. I'm not a big fan of positive thinking. I don't know what the rhetoric is where you guys are, but I'm not a big fan of positive thinking. I am a big fan of positive thinking alongside with realistic optimism, which looks at the reality of the situation, but doesn't focus on the reality of the situation. And some people say, well, that's just who I am, and my brain is negative and I can only think about the problems in the world. Well, we kind of know from neuroscience that you have neuroplasticity, and neuroplasticity means that if I'm wired to detect threat, which is what I told you guys, that I can also exercise gratitude, and I can also exercise giving and generosity and love and kindness. And that actually will make me a more balanced person. So imagine you go into the gym and you lift with your left hand every single day. Your left hand is going to be super strong. For thousands of years, we have exercised our threat muscle. Okay, we look for threat in the environment because it kept us alive. But I'm telling you that you can focus on building the positive and the gratitude and the love and the kindness and the compassion muscle by doing something every day. So go to the end of your day and say, what went well today? You can talk about all the things that didn't go well. And you can focus on the things that gave you joy today, like the weather. Like I sat in the sun or in the sun, and I felt the sun on my back and I felt so relaxed. Like there's so many things that you can actually expand. And then tomorrow when I ask you, how was your day yesterday? You'll say, oh, the weather was so good, because you memorized that moment. So focus on the things that are also good in your life while you tend to the things that are not so good. So that's what realistic optimism is it looks at the negative and it also focuses on the positive. And we want to be able to do both. If you do positive thinking without naming the things that are negative in your life or difficult in your life, then it's hollow and it's inauthentic. These are some of the apps that I recommend. These are the two that I really love. If you're having trouble focusing, I really recommend Brain FM. I don't get paid to say these things, but I've tried every app, I've tried everything. But for me, Breathwork is a great app and Brain FM is a great app. And these are some of the Instagram channels that I contribute to. Lighthearted Parenting, Smart Heart Board Game are for parents. Dr. Saleh Afridi, Lighthouse Arabia are for adult students. And then Lighthouse Insight is for young adults, college students. So I would really recommend using that as a resource for university students as well as high school students. And we have TikTok as well. So I would recommend doing all of those things and following those for good resources by clinical teams. I'd be very happy to stop here and take some questions. I saw that there were some questions that came in.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Saleh. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
That was a very insightful presentation. I appreciate that. And the Lighthouse Arabia looks like a wonderful opportunity for people to learn from. We appreciate you. We appreciate you being with us. And now we would like to entertain some questions for Dr. Saleh or comments. Anything?
Can I go first?
Go ahead, sure.
How do we raise a resilient child? How do we teach those concepts for our children?
So I have 4 children, and this was a very difficult time for all of us. 3 of them are teenagers, and the research shows that this period was most difficult for teenagers. You know, COVID and being isolated from friends and sports and schools and things like that. So it was a very difficult time. I actually did my dissertation on parenting because I really was so worried about things. And that was 17 years ago, before I was expecting my first child. And I would say when it comes to resilience, you cannot raise anything or anyone unless you yourself have done your work. One of the best books that I read, and it's an old school book, like 20 years, is Parenting from the Inside Out. So much has happened in the field of neurobiology, but if my nervous system is not regulated, my children's nervous system will not be regulated. If I don't have an emotional vocabulary, my children will not have an emotional vocabulary. If I come to things like, oh, you know, Bas, everything happens for a good reason, and I don't actually say, this is really hard. This is like, we're really struggling with this. If I can't have space inside of myself to say that to my kids, then my kids are not going to have space inside of them to name it. So you are actually the proxy nervous system for your child. You are their frontal lobe. You are their nervous system regulator, because the child does not have a fully functioning nervous system. So the work you do on yourself and the way you teach people, the kids, on how to develop an emotional vocabulary, and the Smart Heart board game, because I was seeing that there were so many parents that were struggling with this and so many kids that were struggling with this. We actually created Smart Heart board game, which is a board game, which is a beautiful game. And I really highly recommend that you guys invest in getting that game and then playing it every week or every other week with your young children. You know, I have 4 children, and not a single one of them, not because I'm a superior mother in any case, because they have their own issues, let me tell you, but not a single one threw a tantrum, and not a single one said, I'm not going to bed, or resisted. Why? Is because I was super tuned in to that. This one needs a 20-minute warning. This one needs a 5-minute warning. This one just needs to be told to go to bed. Like, each kid will be different. And so Smart Heart board game actually develops emotional intelligence in children. But let me tell you, I have seen it develop emotional intelligence in adults as well. Because if I ask you how many feeling words you have, you actually would, I'm going to write this out, Smart Heart Board Game. It's on Instagram and you can find out more about it, but you only would have sad, mad, grief, lost. I mean, we wouldn't have a lot of words, but research shows the more vocabulary you have, the more space you have for those big feelings. So teaching people, kids, empathy, emotional regulation. What do you do when you're angry? Have you talked to your kids about that? How do you handle when you feel sad? What works for you? You know, my daughter Salama, who's 7 years old, like, what works for you when you're sad? She might say, well, you know, I really just like to scream in a pillow. Okay, releasing that is going to work. Like, building a tool set for your children is, these types of conversations need to be happening very deliberately. We are not being very deliberate in the way we talk about emotional health and emotional intelligence with our children. Slowly and surely we'll get there, but right now we are a long ways away. But Smart Heart Board Game is a great way to start, for parents to just start having those conversations that are quite difficult to sort of like, where do I even begin? So it's quite research-based, evidence-based board game that we've created, and it's available at the Lighthouse.
Thank you. Any more questions? You can open your microphone and ask questions.
Well, it looks like I've answered the questions. If you guys don't want to ask the question, you can always direct message me on my Instagram or my LinkedIn. I'm available on both. If I could ask you guys if this was helpful for you. I know you guys have your own feedback and, you know, opinion form that you guys form, but if this was helpful for you, if you could go on Google reviews and leave us a review, because people find out about us through those reviews and they trust the voice of you guys. I can say that we are here to serve, and we do these talks. We don't charge for these talks. We are here to serve, but I would also ask if you could go on Google review and leave us a message there that that could, you know, speak to the people on the Lighthouse and its services, one of them being these webinars that we do.
Can I ask, please?
Yes, go ahead, Fatima.
Yes, Dr. Saliha, thank you for all your advices. Really, it was a great session from you. I really like it. I present myself, I'm Siham, and I studied psychology clinic in my country, and also I have a certificate of life coaching, but I really want to have more courses. My question is if there is any courses in the Lighthouse Arabia that you give personally, or there is any informations that you give. Can you give me an answer about this?
Yes. Yes, Siham. So one of the courses that I would recommend all of you guys to take, because you are in happiness research and you are in a university and you are young adults and you have people that you encounter, is mental health first aid. Mental health first aid is an evidence-based program in 23 countries. It's based out of Australia, and, you know, lots of governments like the UK and the US are actually investing a lot of money and energy in training people to be first responders. The Lighthouse is the only clinic where you can actually get mental health first aid certification, where you can actually identify and respond to a mental health difficulty that you might see in people. You might actually be able to do that mental health first aid on yourself as well. So I would just recommend everyone to get certified in mental health first aid. And then tell the people in your life to get trained in mental health first aid, because if we look at World Health Organization statistics, and these are pre-COVID statistics, that 1 in 4 people will struggle with a mental health disorder, meaning mental health difficulty. And just look at how you guys have felt, right? All of us have felt a bit overwhelmed, or maybe anxious, or maybe sad or depressed even in the last few years. Like, we need to be able to know when that is, and then we need to be able to know when we should get help. And so that's one course that I would recommend. We do one a month, every month, for the community. It can be done online, and you get a 3-year certification. And then we have booster sessions. If you become a first aid responder, we actually do free coaching sessions once a month. Not coaching, but almost like a debriefing that, oh, I did this with my friend who was feeling very anxious, or I did this with my colleague who was really emotional. And is that okay? What did I do right? Or that was very overwhelming for me. So we do support sessions that are free of charge for the community once you become a first aider. So that's one thing that I would really recommend. But we're always doing workshops. Our workshops tend to be sort of well-being related, but one workshop that we are doing, and you will find it on our website, is ACT technique. So this is acceptance and commitment therapy techniques. Let's see, it's coming, and I think it's coming up on March 17th, and it also will be either online or in person. And that's another tool set that you can sort of, if you are in psychology and you are in coaching, you actually can take those courses, but it will help you learn more. Acceptance and commitment therapy is one of my favorite modalities because it talks a lot about values. It talks about committed action towards your goals. So it's really great for people who are interested in psychology and in coaching. So that's one other course that I would recommend. Those are sort of the 10-hour type of courses that we're doing, but there are many others you can find on our website. Let me just write that here.
Yes. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
There's a question I got from Baida, where, you know, someone's in the UK and she said that, you know, how do we navigate grief? The same way that the first slide that, you know, the second slide that I showed you is that making space for it and allowing for it. You know, you are grieving a loss and we need to just hold space for that, but also know that you are longing for connection. And as old as time, as old as we have been around, we are a tribal people. We existed in tribes, in small groups. And so you need to find a place where you can find your people. And if you are in a new place or a new country, go to things that are like, you know, like book clubs or painting classes or yoga classes. If you, whatever your interest is in, go to those types of classes. And from there, you will find people that are similar to you. And so really, you're going to have to push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, but grieve the loss and then reach out. Grieve the loss and reach out, because it is going to be important that you tend to both those parts of you, but don't just wait for people to show up in your life. You actually have to go out and make an effort to connect, especially if you are in a new place. It's going to feel super uncomfortable, but you know, you're going to have to sort of step outside that comfort zone.
I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
If I noticed that my parents for long years have been deciding and addressing issues and problems and challenges by fear, and I've noticed that I have inherited this thing, and I want to stop this process in which it will affect my choosing, you know, for doing, for example, hobbies and doing, addressing stuff. How can I process that fear?
Well, you know, fear can be a great, important emotion. You know, if we have learned fear, then we need to figure out, like, you know, for example, if you are afraid of public speaking, then maybe it's a good thing that you're afraid until you actually skill up. So it's like a systematic desensitization and coaching and public speaking and skill building. So that's one aspect of it, that you are going to have to learn new skills for you to feel more confident in any realm. Okay, so fear, we don't want to just live fearlessly. Fear is a great informant. We want to pay attention to fear because it's telling us that something is important to us. But the other thing is that we can tend to get really problem focused, really like narrow in our mind, that, oh my God, look at what's happening, look at what's happening, look at what's happening. And that, you know, I remember I'm a great problem solver, but for like 16, 17 years of my life, I was really good at solving problems because I could see the problem in every situation, because I grew up in an environment that was very critical. So if the table is beautiful, like, but there's a little corner that has dust on it, I'm going to see the dust. Instead of seeing the whole table that was so beautiful, I'm going to go see the corner that has like a dust on it. So instead of looking at life where you become so problem focused, this was the last slide I spoke about. I want you to see the whole table. So name the problem, name the critique, name the issue, and then say, okay, what is good in this situation? And keep struggling with it until you find the good in it. And you will, I swear, as long as you have breath and you are alive, there is something good that comes out of everything. That what can I do? And how will this grow me? So in case of, for example, with Baida, who said that, you know, she's navigating grief, she moved to a new place, like, you are now going to grow by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. You are going to make new people. And maybe those new people are going to be, they will help you develop parts of you that you never developed before. Yes, it's sad that I don't have my old people and my friends, and I miss my country and, but look at all the opportunity that is there. So they found in research that even people who have suffered trauma, so PTSD, war, and, you know, turmoil and chaos, there was something called post-traumatic stress growth. Because people who went through trauma, but they learned something from it, or they opened themselves up to life, they actually lived deeper. They were engaged more. They were more grateful. They were more accepting of other people's faults. They had a humility and a compassion that they would never have had if they hadn't gone through such things. So be afraid and also be compassionate, be afraid and also be grateful. And so we don't want to eliminate something, we want to just grow something else. So really think about what are some values that I would like to exercise more in my life. And whatever you exercise will get stronger. And if you exercise mindfulness, if you exercise compassion, if you exercise forgiveness, if you exercise kindness, for sure, the fear will get smaller. It will still be there. I can still see the problems. I can still see the issue on the table, the dust on the table, but there are so many other things I also see. So instead of focusing on how do I get rid of my fear, think about what can I grow? What are values in me that I already exist that I can do more of? The fear will sort itself out.
Thank you so much.
I agree with you, Dr. Salha, especially when you said, take things step by step. And by minimizing things, cutting them into portions, you can handle them a lot better than when you see tons of things piling on top of your head and then trying to solve them. So take one thing at a time, I think. And that's the best way to do it. And just realize there are some things you cannot control. I mean, the horrible things that are going around in the world, you can't control those. So deal with things. God, give me the grace to accept things that I cannot control. And that's the way it is. And there are some things are beyond us.
Amen.
Appreciate it. Any other questions for Dr. Salha before she leaves. This is your last opportunity.
Or you could message me. But I really would appreciate your feedback on Google, guys. So please take some time to just leave your feedback there, okay? As long as, and also on this feedback and opinion form. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And if there's anything that the Lighthouse can do for you guys in the future, please, reach out to us. We are here for you. All right,
Please
guys.
do the evaluation, and we'll share that evaluation with Dr. Salha. We
Thank you.
appreciate you. We applaud you being with us, giving these insightful comments. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it. And
you.
hopefully we'll see you again. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.